Q-4C high-altitude drone was in international airspace, not over Iranian territory. The latest dust-up between Iran and the U.S. follows U.S. claims that Iran attacked 2 oil tankers last week in the Gulf of Oman. On the campaign trail, former Vice President Joe Biden refusing to apologize for a comment that he made about the Senate getting things done with civility, even when the body included segregationists. And that unleashed a flurry of criticism from rival Democratic presidential hopefuls.
Cory Booker says Joe Biden should apologize for what he said about working with senators who supported segregation. Biden had a chance to do it as he was walking into a fundraiser, but instead he said Booker is the one who should say he's sorry.
He knows better. There's not a racist bone in my body. I've been involved in civil rights my whole career.
But this is an issue that's deeply personal to many of his opponents.
Fox's Kristen Fisher. Meantime, President Trump denies a Wall Street Journal report that he will live tweet during this month's Democratic primary debates, but suggested might not be a bad idea. However, he says he has sized up his competition.
Whoever it is, I don't know. I mean, I look at some of them. I don't see George Washington. I don't see Churchill. I don't see anybody in particular that I worry about.
The president speaking to Fox's Hannity Wednesday night. This is Fox News.
Hey, welcome to this Subway ad for the new club collection. How do you want it?
I'll take a book club.
Absolutely.
So, last week we sunk our teeth into Subway's meaty new release, the Steak Club.
I didn't finish it yet.
Oh, not again, Sandra. This week, it's the new Southwest Chicken Club, also by Subway. No spoilers, but there's a tasty twist.
Jalapeno cheddar bread and guacamole?
Sandra, get out. Subway, make it what you want.
Good ending.
Limited time only at participating restaurants.
This is Ronnie. Ronnie is about to break his piggy bank.
Come on, piggy bank.
Ronnie wants to upgrade his smartphone.
And this piggy's gonna help me.
If Ronnie had signed up for GTA's handset payment option, he could have selected a new smartphone with an affordable monthly plan.
I could have what?
Exactly. Sign up for HBO at GTA and don't break the bank.
I'm sorry, piggy bank.
Terms and conditions apply. GTA, we start with you.
The Trump administration finalizes its plans to roll back the Clean Power Plan and replace it with what environmentalists call a dirty power plan.
The Environmental Protection Agency is giving states more leeway to set requirements on efficiency upgrades for coal plants, a significant rollback to rules put in place by the Obama administration. EPA Administrator Andrew Wheeler says coal-fired power plants are essential to the power grid, and Americans want reliable energy they can afford. Top Democrats in Congress, like Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, called the rule change a giveaway to polluters.
It's a huge step backward in a decade-long effort to protect our planet and the Earth's precious resources.
The Trump administration is also considering rolling back vehicle mileage standards put in place during the previous administration. On Capitol Hill, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
Self-help guru Tony Robbins faces new series of allegations that he groped and harassed fans and staffers. BuzzFeed says these latest claims bring the total of women who accuse the motivational speaker of sexual misconduct to 10. He denies any wrongdoing. Investigators in the Dominican Republic now say the shooting of former Red Sox slugger David Ortiz was a case of mistaken identity.
The man who orchestrated the attack that left David Ortiz shot was not targeting the former Boston Red Sox great, but in fact a relative of the suspect who he believed ratted him out to drug investigators. Prosecutors revealing Victor Hugo Gomez is the man behind the shooting that left Big Papi with damage to his internal organs after being wounded at a Santo Domingo restaurant back on June 9th. A case of mistaken identity, as officials say the plot was against David Fernandez. Gomez, a member of Mexico's Gulf Cartel, remains at large and is believed to be in the United States. So far, 11 people have been detained in the attack on Big Papi. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
Doctors at the Boston hospital that Ortiz is in have now upgraded his condition to good. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Here at APL, our core values give the company its heart and soul. Whether it's connecting your business with our global network through our newly enhanced service or investing our efforts into giving back to the community, APL is committed to serving you. We humbly honor the opportunity to find innovative solutions for you and your business. To learn more about our enhanced service, call 588-4651 or visit www.apl.com/Guam for more details. Your home is one of the most important investments you'll make in your life. At Nanbo Insurance, you can rest easy knowing that you're covered with reliable and affordable homeowners insurance. Nanbo makes it easy to protect what matters the most so you can enjoy the moments that matter the most. With Nanbo, you can also save big when you bundle up and insure your car, home, motorcycle, or business. Enjoy great savings up to 50%. Visit nanbo.com or call 477-9754 for more details.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It's how we start Tall Tales every day, today being no different from any other. We're starting that way today because our constitutional rights are so important, the Bill of Rights, the Second Amendment, etc. And I've been harping on this one for the Second Amendment the last couple of days here. I have a printout here from the Bearing Arms website, and I'll just read a sentence or two of it, and you'll see where we're going here with this. So we need to let people know we're here, we're armed, and to get used to it. June is Gay Pride Month. It used to be a single week, but it's expanded. It's a time where the LGBT community reaches out and celebrates their existence. It was used initially to remind people that gay folks existed and they weren't going to hide in the closet anymore. Ironically, many of those celebrating are trying to push us into that same closet. Well, I'm not going. I don't care if you rebrand the metaphorical closet as a gun safe. I'm not going, and not because I make my living talking about the Second Amendment. This is Tom Knighton from the website talking here. Even if I didn't, I'd still refuse to be rendered invisible. So I'm proposing we make damn sure people know we're here and we won't be silent. Next month is July, the month we celebrate our nation's independence. How did we get independence? We shot people who thought we shouldn't have it. That's how we did it. As such, I'm making a humble proposal to the pro-gun people throughout the land. I propose we make July Gun Pride Month. Think of the majesty of it. Gun Pride Month. A parade down Marine Corps Drive with every single gunner on the island and carrying at least one firearm. Flags such as the NRA national flag posted in front of the, let's turn it right side up, posted in front of the governor's office, at Government House, and at the legislature. People waving that flag as the parade marches by. Gun Pride Month. Let's make July Gun Pride Month. Okay, so much for the Second Amendment. Moving from there right on to, what do we call it, Real Joe Cruz?
Zemi Cutney, sir.
Zemi Cutney. And the Real Joe Cruz almost has a Pavlovian response to the word Jemmy. He hears the word Jemmy and he keys up that energetic Meet the Press theme song. As though here on Tall Tales we needed any more energy than we already have. You know, just the thrill of addressing our international radio listening audience is enough to energize me every day of the week. In fact, it's enough to energize me 7 days a week. But we have to take Saturday and Sunday off, much to my chagrin and that of the real Joe Cruz. We go into serious withdrawal by late Sunday afternoon. We can hardly wait for 4 o'clock Monday to come around, get back on Tall Tales. So back to Zemi Ikotny. It's my backwards, multilingual, bilingual play on words, press the meat, which we translate into meet the press. And it's that time when I chide the Daily News for not running their own editorials, but copying something from Gannett. And every once in a blue moon, the Daily News will run an editorial that's actually local. And when it does, I will compare it with the editorial in the Post and award the more meritorious of the two the coveted blue star. I have my blue pencil right here. And as I go through these editorials, I hunt down grammatical mistakes and improper usage of the English language. And when I find them, I let you know, and I mark up those editorials. It's really an exciting undertaking here. Zemi Ikotny. Yesterday we had kind of a black swan as far as Zemi Ikotny was concerned, because I awarded the blue star to both editorials. That happens very seldom, because usually for the Daily News editorial, it's a contest between a 0 and no 0, not between blue star and no blue star. Today is no exception. Here's the Daily News editorial, guest editorial. Predatory lenders, the dark side of reverse mortgages. Oh boy, you know, I'll bet you when I finish reading this, the legislature will go into special session and adopt language to combat the predatory lenders who are conning our folks into reverse mortgages for unjust reasons. What do you think, Real Joe Cruz?
I think you're right, sir.
Yeah, if they don't, you know what I might do? I might draft a bill and send it down to them.
There you go.
Yeah. So today's so-called editorial, guest editorial, comes from the USA Today editorial board. Well, I'm going to send it right back to the USA editorial board and tell you guys, no chance. We're looking for home cooking here. We don't want something that we could order from Amazon, some kind of a snack we get from Amazon. We're looking for home cooking, not something that's shipped in from 8,000 miles away. So if you don't like blue stars, just keep doing that. Okay, then the Post. And here's the Post. Governor's Washington liaison officer needs to be helpful. Now, for those who don't remember who the governor's Washington liaison officer is, it's a certain Madeleine Bordallo, who has a $50,000 gig to work in Washington as the representative of Governor Leon Guerrero. You probably remember that Madeleine Bordallo was our delegate to Congress up until she was beaten soundly by a certain Michael San Nicolas, who was probably half her age, and I was going to say twice as smart, but I held back on that, Real Joe Cruz. My kindness function is in place today. So here's what the editorial says. It's her bill that San Nicolas is trying to fix, ultimately to get the checks out for our wartime victims and survivors. What that means is that Madeleine's bill was defective because even though it was passed and signed by the president, it couldn't. There was a glitch in it that would not allow the Treasury Department to release checks to those claims that had been adjudicated by the War Claims Commission. So over 600 claims have been adjudicated, and you know how many people have received checks so far, Real Joe Cruz? Tadza. Yeah. It's Governor Lou Leon Guerrero's choice to continue to pay former Delegate Madeleine Bordallo to be her liaison officer or her communicator in Washington, D.C. Now, there is a sentence, a loaded sentence. It's Governor Lou Leon Guerrero's choice to continue to pay former Delegate Madeleine Bordallo to be her liaison officer in Washington. In other words, hey, Lou, you really ought to consider firing this lady. Yeah, that's a kind of a polite roundabout way of saying maybe you should just get rid of her. Or I guess I could use Linda Uggen as a verb. You know, Lou, maybe it's time you Linda Uggened Madeleine Bordallo. However, when it comes to who ultimately represents Guam in the nation's capital and in the U.S. Congress, a majority of Guam's voters decided last year it's time for Delegate Michael San Nicolas to be that voice without any distractions. Bordallo was Guam's delegate in Congress for more than a decade, but she lost to San Nicolas in a clear victory for the latter. Despite many Guam Democratic leaders' lack of support for the freshman member of Congress, during the primary. You remember that San Nicolas wouldn't sign the Democrat Party pledge, saying that he would support, if he lost, he would support the person that beat him. He didn't sign that. And several well-known Democrats like Ken Paris came out and criticized him roundly, but it didn't seem to hurt him because he won anyhow. In an ideal situation, Bordallo's $50,000 a year liaison work for the governor's office would be focused on supporting rather than undermining, whether intended or not, San Nicolas's efforts in the nation's capital on behalf of the people of Guam. On Wednesday, San Nicolas had to release a letter from the U.S. Treasury Department to clarify that his legislation, H.R. 1365, would suffice as corrective legislation following the lack of language in the Bordallo-introduced war reparations bill. Bordallo's bill, which became law, authorized payment of reparations, authorized payment of reparations to the Chamorro victims of Japanese atrocities. However, Bordallo's bill lacked key language that would authorize the Treasury Department to cut the checks for the war survivors who had been awarded wartime reparations. San Nicolas' bill is scheduled for a markup hearing Thursday in the House Natural Resources Committee. Well, Guam Post, you're a little bit behind time. The markup hearing was held, and the committee unanimously approved San Nicolas's bill. So now it goes, we hope, from the committee to the floor. On the eve of the markup, hearing Thursday in the House Natural Resources Committee, Bordallo unnecessarily criticized San Nicolas's bill as flawed. Bordallo told the Guam Daily Post in a phone interview Wednesday that she spoke with certain House Natural Resources Committee members who told her there were errors in San Nicolas's bill that needed to be corrected. San Nicolas said there was no need for so-called corrections because the legislation was reviewed by staffers at the committee level. The bottom line for Bordallo, is that she either needs to step back or be supportive of Guam's current representative in Congress, especially on efforts that are aimed to benefit Guam as a community. She cannot continue to use her Guam taxpayer-paid position to appear to sound still like a sore election loser. It's her bill that San Nicolas is trying to fix, ultimately to get the checks cut for our wartime survivors and victims. We need her to be helpful. Yeah, this is a real editorial. Agree with it or don't agree with it. In the old days, nowadays we would have to talk in terms of, well, you know, they really called a pointed entrenching tool, didn't they? Once upon a time, we would have said, hey, the Post called a spade, didn't they? And they sure did. And they're absolutely right. Even if Madeleine doesn't think that San Nicolas is doing the right thing, even if she disagrees with him, I have a 2-word suggestion for her. Are you ready for this? Shut up. Because you're not doing anyone any favors by speaking out against our representative in Congress. Whether you like him, you don't like him, whether he's good, whether he's bad, it does none of us any good for you to publicly criticize him. Excuse me, I lost my head again. Them. Yeah. So, Madeleine, if you're going to be useful in Washington, the first thing you got to do is stop being unuseful, if there is such a word. Stop being counterproductive. And I go back and reread the first line of the editorial today. It's Governor Lou Leon Guerrero's choice to continue to pay former delegate Madeleine Bordallo to be her liaison officer or communicator in Washington, D.C. So without further ado, and not by default because the Post earned it, here goes the coveted blue star. The Post got it. Okay, so from there we go to the card. I see, let me got some phone traffic here first that I might take care of before I start the card. While I'm waiting, you know, a couple days ago, I read something from one of the news sources that talked in terms of an underage child. And we had some discussion about what an underage child was. Because we know that by definition, a child is, in general parlance, underage. When you turn 18, you are no longer a child and you are no longer underage. So we had some clever posts on that, etc. And, of course, as is his nature, our poet laureate chimed in on that very question. And here's what the poet laureate of Tall Tales said. You might prefer Adidas or reading a scholarly treatise, but out in the wild, an underage child is something I'd call a fetus. The poet laureate of Tall Tales. The yeah, and then I'm going to go into the whole Jane Flores kerfuffle in a minute. So I'm going to read this one before, you know, while I'm sitting here with Andrew's products in my hands. Jane Flores' new stunt is to start a manhunt an abortionist for Guam to procure. As she looks far and wide, there's nowhere to hide, for she found a butcher's fresh spoor. Spoor means scent. When she finds one, she'll plead, coax, cajole, and then lead the abortionist to Guam for a tour. An offer she'll make, lots of cash for the take, will be a most enticing lure. See the sun, see the sand, see the dough in my hand. You'll love Guam, I assure. Guam has no rabies, but see all these babies? Help! We need a quick cure. So abortionists worldwide come to Guam and reside. Here, take a look at our brochure. So, you know, Real Joe Cruz, a lot of times I don't care much about talking about myself.
But this is about you.
Yeah, well, actually, everything's about me, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Andrew here is thanking me for giving him his license. And it's a poetic license. Now, poetic license means that a poet in writing a poem can sometimes use exaggeration, minimization, non sequiturs, alternative facts, etc., just to make his rhyme come out right. It's called poetic license. So here's what Andrew says. I've learned a thing that makes bells ring. It's precious and it's priceless. As Tall Tales poet, wouldn't you know it, I have poetic license. It's not a hoax for all you folks who think it's merely chatter. Au contraire, for I do swear it's better than personnel matter. I can say in any way just about anything. I may be splenetic, but with license poetic, I'm mightier than a king. And then he says, thanks for the license, Bob. Well, it's the least I could do for the poet laureate of Tall Tales, I guess. Okay, so from there we launch into the card for today, and this is what I got on the card. I've got Tall Tales versus the Abortionist, which is actually a continuation of Lou and Jane versus the Nationalists, AOC versus the Hyde Amendment, Michelle Armenta versus Jane Flores, Tall Tales versus abortion procurement, Maria Espinosa versus Lou and Jane, and Lou versus babies. And then I've got Linda Uggan versus Richard Ibanez. I've got Sabina versus the Lou LG budget. I've got Therese Trelawney and others versus Lou LG. And then I've got, from the national side, Turley versus Glotty. And if I get that far, a little bit of Bavacqua versus King George, the straw man. Okay, so starting out here with Tall Tales versus the Abortionist. And once again, my apology, you know, as much as I hate it, as much as I try to avoid it, Real Joe Cruz, this time I can't avoid it. You know why?
It's about you?
Yeah, it's about me, yeah. Okay, so this is a story that ran on PNC last night. Is it the governor's duty to find an abortionist who will relocate to Guam and perform abortions on island? Former Senator Robert Klitzkie says no, it isn't. And to ensure the administration does not perform outside its scope of governmental functions, he's put together legislation to stop the search at taxpayers' expense. Since May of last year, the island has not had any abortions performed because there's no licensed doctor willing to perform the procedure. With Governor Leon Guerrero announcing that search was on for an abortion doctor, Klitzkie proposed draft legislation to senators that would put an end to this. Klitzkie's legislation is called the Prohibition of Procuring an Abortionist Act of 2019. The governor and Jane Flores at the Bureau of Women's Affairs are apparently attempting to recruit an abortionist or entice an abortionist to come to Guam. Apparently, because there haven't been any reported abortions since May of last year. Maybe they see that as an emergency, Klitzkie said. The search for an abortionist began after concerns were raised regarding victims of sexual abuse who become pregnant as a result of rape and not having an option to terminate the pregnancy. Jane Flores, who heads the Bureau of Women's Affairs, said she's a one-woman show who is contracting Planned Parenthood and coalitions.org. Now, I looked up coalitions.org and I couldn't find it, which matches abortion providers with clinics and clinics with abortion providers. It's kind of a clearinghouse for abortionists, I guess. According to Klitzkie, Flores has stated that she is unsure if the abortionist would work for the government or in the private sector. He said Flores will be having a closed-door meeting with the Department of Public Health and Social Services officials to address the issue of recruiting a doctor. According to Flores, no money is being expended by the government to do this. Right now, it's just conversations. Well, apparently, if they're behind closed doors, they're private conversations. But Klitzkie's legislation would prohibit any government employee from recruiting an abortionist, as government time would be expended in the search, and that translates into government dollars. Klitzkie also has other concerns on how the issue is being handled. I just don't see it as a proper governmental function for Jane to be out recruiting an abortionist for the island, Klitzkie said. While the governor has taken a pro-choice stance on the issue of abortion, Adaloop did not provide comment on Klitzkie's proposed legislation, as the governor is currently in transit back to the island. And I guess the lieutenant governor didn't feel like speaking out on it either. Okay, we got a short break coming up here.
In illness and in wellness, Calvo's Select Care is health care that is there for you. That's why over 80% of the Guam medical community places their trust and insures with us. We offer our members wellness and fitness programs for a healthier lifestyle and provide a comprehensive medical network on and off island to help members from unexpected illnesses. Contact Calvo's Select Care today for more information.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Have you ever heard the term Kaizen? It's about making improvements, but not in the traditional way we usually think about. I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show with Daryl Taggarty, we'll look at why Kaizen could be meaningful in your career.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Welcome back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, Guam's single voice of reason. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Yeah, so that's how the a rival network covered the news. PNC did a pretty good job of it, I'd say. And there's something that I've been meaning to kind of get to, but I haven't gotten around to it. This would be a good time. The Bureau of Women's Affairs, and I went through the provisions of the Bureau of Women's Affairs yesterday, the organic statute for the Bureau of Women's Affairs. And in essence, what it is, it's about equality and discrimination. The purpose of the Bureau of Women's Affairs is to see to it that women are treated equally in the workplace and kind of giving equal chances with members of, at the time the bill was introduced, the other sex. I suppose that is no longer the proper way to look at it. I suppose I need to now say the other sexes or genders or whatever it is that we're dealing with now. But it occurs to me that if that's the purpose of the Bureau of Women's Affairs, isn't that little kid in the back seat who always says, "Are we there yet? Are we there yet?" Shouldn't we tell him, "Yeah, we're here"? Yeah, I know it's been a long ride, Junior, but quit saying, "Are we there yet?" because we are there. So if at the time that the Bureau of Women's Affairs statute was drafted, there were concerns that women weren't getting a fair shake in the workplace, that there was discrimination, improper, a lack of equality for women, etc. Maybe it's time to take another look at the statute that created the Bureau of Women's Affairs and repeal it. And the reason I say that, I think we're all extremely aware of the fact that we now have 10 women in our 15-person legislature. We now have a female governor. The Chief Justice of our Supreme Court is a female. The Adjutant General, Guam National Guard, a female. The State Command Sergeant Major, a female. If you tune around the dial, I don't advise that you do this, but if you did, you'd even find that there are female talk show hosts, talk radio hosts. So how much more equal? Let me put it this way. What do we do to make women more equaler than they are right now? Now, I suppose if I wanted to be sarcastic, I'd say maybe we should amend the statute that created the Bureau of Women's Affairs and just go through with a search and replace and change women to men. Maybe we need a Bureau of Men's Affairs to see to it that men get a fair shake in the workplace and are treated equally, etc. Bureau of Women's Affairs. But then, of course, on the other side, there's mission creep at the Bureau of Women's Affairs. The statute tells them what their mission is, but instead of doing those things, Jane, and I can understand why, because there's nothing left to do. Jane Flores is doing something that's completely outside the description of what the Bureau of Women's Affairs is for, because she has now become the procurer of an abortionist. She's the abortionist procurer, which is not part of the mandate of her statute. In fact, it's a title that I don't think exists anywhere in any of the volumes that describe our government and what it does. So yeah, I think maybe it's time to take a look at the Bureau of Women's Affairs and seeing if perhaps it hasn't outlived its usefulness. Okay, so much for the Bureau of Women's Affairs and that story on PNC. And the next item on the card, as soon as I find the card, yeah. Is Linda Uggan versus Richard Ibanez. I hope. Yeah. Okay. So here's what's happened. Linda Uggan has been working for the Department of Parks and Recreation for 35 years. Point number one, after you've worked about 26 or 27 years under the old plan, and if somebody's been there for 35 years, that person's under the old plan, you could retire and get a paper route and make more money. Once you've been working for the government for 35 years, you're down to working for about 10% of your pay, actually. So I don't know how that's important. I suppose some people would say, well, that just shows you that Linda Uggan is really dedicated to her job. That even though it's not as financially lucrative for her as retiring and getting some other kind of work, she's stuck with it. Second thing is that Linda Uggan is the SHPO, State Historic Preservation Officer. And the State Historic Preservation Officer is located in the Department of Parks and Recreation. Thus, she comes under the supervision of the Director of Parks and Recreation, Richard Ibanez. A couple days ago, we found out very quickly that Linda Uggan had been fired. Now, usually when an employee is fired, management doesn't want to talk about it. You know why they don't want to talk about it, Real Joe Cruz?
It's a personnel matter.
Exactly. It's a personnel matter. So management usually stays away from that, and oftentimes you don't find that a government employee has been cut loose from his job, except by perhaps surreptitious means, gossips, rumors, or something like that, and then management ordinarily won't say anything. Quite often the employee doesn't want to talk about it either. But the day after Linda Uggan was fired, 3 of the 4 news outlets carried the story. And 3 of the 4 news outlets interviewed Rob Koss, who works for the GFT and has the ability to represent employees before the Civil Service Commission. That was strange. How did the news get out so fast unless Linda Uggan was the one who spread the news? Or unless Linda Uggan gave it to someone else who decided to start a campaign, a Linda Uggan campaign. Well, maybe you finally opened up the Tom lines, huh? Good afternoon, Tom.
How you doing?
I'm doing great, Tom.
Anyway, you reminded me of something that's very important to me and I think to all of us taxpayers. Since you are a lawyer, sir, we need your help to find out exactly what can we do to reduce the back pay of the idiot that was backed up by the Civil Service Commission. Now we, the taxpayers, owe him a back wages of $700,000.
Yeah, well, I'm not quite sure that's how it's going to come out, Tom, because there's a doctrine called mitigation of damages. And I'll explain it, okay? Someone who gets fired has a duty to go out and look for comparable employment. And if he makes any money on any kind of employment, it's deducted from the award of back pay. If he doesn't, if he just said, the hell with it, they fired me, they were wrong, I'm going to stay home and watch TV, if he can't prove that he went out and looked for comparable employment, he doesn't get any back pay at all. So the thing to hope for here is that whoever the lawyer is that's representing the Department of Public Works here raised the issue of mitigation of damages and did a workmanlike job on that. Because it may very well be that the amount that the employee is actually paid in back pay is substantially less than $700,000, and it could be zero.
Yeah, that's why I called, because I know that there was another incident that's similar to this, and you did say that if the guy worked during the time that he was fired, he should not get all of that back pay back. Just because the Civil Service Commission says he will get all of this back pay back, that doesn't mean that that exactly what will happen.
Yeah.
Like you said, if he worked in the meantime while he was being fired, being laid off or fired from the job, and he got reinstated, he should not get all of that back. And that's why I'm asking you to keep track of this, and let's make sure that nothing happens, because I'm sure that this guy worked somewhere. He should not get all of that $700,000 back.
And he had to actually, he had a duty to go out and find, you know, like if you are a truck driver and you get fired, then you have a duty to go to probably every trucking company on the island and apply for a job. That's the way that the doctrine of mitigation of damages works.
And if he is just too lazy to go out and look for work, then he will not get all of those $700,000 back, right?
That's the law, yeah.
Okay, that's good. So, because the Vince Arreola at DPW is ready to give him the $700,000 right now. He's ready asking the administration to fork out the $700,000.
Well, we don't know the posture of the case. We don't know if that matter, the mitigation was raised at the Civil Service Commission or what. But if it hasn't been, I don't think it's too late, and it certainly should be.
Well, I read on the Post today that Vince Arreola, the DPW director, is already asking the administration to fork out the $700,000 now.
Well, let me do this, Tom. Okay. Hey, Vince. Mitigation of damages. Check into that, and if he hasn't mitigated his damages, don't pay him. I bet he's listening.
This is that same guy that hasn't worked because he had a job injury and he was off, and then he was caught on camera working anyway, and he wasn't really disabled during that time period. This is the same guy that hasn't worked for, I think, 8 years or so, and his supervisor did not know that he's not at work, but yet he's continuing to receive a salary for so many years, I think almost 10 years, I think over 8 years, receiving a salary every 2 weeks, gets a paycheck, and the supervisor didn't even know that he's not at work, that he hasn't shown up to work. This is the same guy. I remember him.
Yeah, I remember that one too, Tom.
This is the same guy. And the Civil Service Commission awarded him back pay. They wanted him reinstated, and they wanted him back pay to be back paid all the way starting back from 2008.
About the only thing I can tell you, Tom, is that Tall Tales wasn't on the air back in 2008, or maybe this wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Anyway, it just makes me mad, you know, thinking about this. It almost seems like a lot of our officials, or the directors of departments and supervisors in our departments are just don't know what they're doing. They're not keeping track of who worked for them, and they're not keeping track whether they're employees are showing up for work, or are they sneaking away from work and going home early? A lot of these supervisors just don't know how to be supervisors. And they're just cheating us taxpayers left and right.
I hear what you're saying, Tom.
All right, buddy. I'll talk to you later.
Thanks for calling.
Yep.
Okay, so where was I with Linda Uggan here? Yeah, the news got out really, really fast. Now, one of the rules of public relations is this: if you have a problem, hang a lantern on it, because if you have a problem and you break the news, then you get to frame the question. And if you frame the question properly, you can control the news cycle for quite a while. So could it be that Linda, I'm just speculating here, I don't know any more than what I read in the papers. Probably don't even know that much, because if you notice, sometimes I forget things like people's first names or who it was that was troubled. I remember who was troubled, real Joe Cruz. It was our Attorney General, Elizabeth Barrett Anderson, when she found out about the Barragata Heights scandal.
Wow, your memory is impeccable, sir.
She was troubled. Yeah. Well, I think my memory's like a hard drive, you know. It's just that there's so that I haven't ever been able to defrag it, and there's so much junk on it that sometimes it takes a long, long time to find the right groove on that hard drive to get the information that I've been looking for. But anyhow, that was it. So anyhow, as far as Linda Uggan is concerned, I'm only speculating. I don't know any more than what I read in the papers. But you could bet that Linda Uggan already has tremendous support, regardless of what the merits of her termination are. You'll recall that when the new legislature was sworn in, I looked in my crystal ball and I said, opposition to the Marines coming to Guam will not be direct. It will not be, we don't want no stinking Marines here. It won't be that. It'll be based on environmental and cultural bases. So you could pretty well assume, I'll be back here in just a minute. Real Joe is playing Take 5 again.
If you're driving, chances are you'll need gas soon. And by the growl in your tummy, a trip to the grocery store too. But don't just buy gas and groceries without getting double miles. Instead, apply for the new United credit card from First Hawaiian Bank and start earning double miles towards your next trip. Gas, groceries, getaway. With the new United credit card, apply at FHB.com. First Hawaiian Bank, member FDIC. Equal housing lender. Additional terms, conditions, and restrictions apply.
When it comes to power and performance, nothing compares to Dodge. And right now at Cars Plus and Mighty, you can save thousands on many Dodge vehicles in stock during our Dodge Performance Days. Like a new 2019 Grand Caravan SE, save $4,250, or save $6,150 on a new Durango SXT. Looking for more power? Take home a new Charger SXT Plus today for only $37,689, or save over $7,000 on a new Challenger GT. Get more power and performance at Cars Plus and Mighty during Dodge Performance Days. Cars Plus, driven by you.
Yeah, so if a person has a problem and he breaks the news, I almost did it again, Real Joe Cruz. If a person has a problem and he breaks it themselves, then he gets to frame the issue. So Linda Uggan certainly was the one who broke the news of Linda Uggan getting fired and had the ability to frame it and at least suggest that this may have been a retaliatory termination. And without, although the grievance that Linda Uggan filed was in the paper, meaning that it must have come from Linda Uggan, the notice of final adverse action was not. So the only knowledge we have of why Linda Uggan was fired is what Linda Uggan told us. And she said that she was fired because she delivered her written grievance to the director of Parks and Recreation using a government car. Well, the natural reaction to that is to say, whoa, that's kind of petty. Is that all it takes to get fired? If so, almost every director or deputy director in the island ought to get fired right away because and mayors, because they're using government vehicles for improper purposes. So it's possible then that this group of environmental, cultural oppositionists to the military buildup see Linda Uggan as the classic rallying point to further their cause. Here's this lady who's worked here for 35 years. She's doing so much to protect our culture. She stands up to the military. She's outspoken. It's exactly what we need. And then they fired her. We can't stand still for this. We've got to stand up for our environment, our culture, and our Linda Uggan. Could that be, am I reading something into this that isn't there? But I've never seen an adverse action, the fact that someone got fired, get out so fast, and so fast that all three of the media would pick it up instantly. I have here the grievance that Linda Uggan filed, and I'll try to find the poignant parts of it. She says the division received personnel order, blah, blah, blah. So again, we see this technique of anthropomorphizing government agencies, the division. I don't know any. Have you ever met anybody named Division, Real Joe Cruz? No. Employee was out conducting an inspection that day with another staff, maybe staff member, and did not receive his personnel order until a few minutes before 5 p.m. I left the office for that day, Friday, at 4 p.m., and did not know of the personnel order until the following day, Saturday, April 6th, at approximately 12 p.m. 12 p.m. is midnight. It was then, when I was at the Agania post office, that I called you to convey my displeasure with the action taken without regards to the protocol between division supervisor and division staff. So I think what she's trying to say there is that since the person that was detailed worked for me, I should have been perhaps the one to tell him, or I should have at least known about it, protocol. But this kind of raises another question. If Linda Uggan's a supervisor and the GFT is representing her, is that the way it usually works? Usually labor unions don't usually the shop steward doesn't represent the foreman when the foreman gets in trouble with the boss. Kind of a sidelight here. I was not informed of Mr. X's, and the name is blocked out, and it's not as part of this. I suppose I know why, don't you, Real Joe Cruz? Yeah. I was not informed of Mr. X's letter regarding his displeasure, I would say, with my supervision of the division and the program policies, nor was I informed by way of messaging or email regarding a personnel order that would be forthcoming or even to meet with me and the employee. So I read this as saying, I was not informed of Mr. X's letter regarding his displeasure with my supervision. So apparently the employee who got detailed had a problem with Linda Uggan. So maybe that's why he was detailed away from Linda Uggan. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Nor was I forwarded by way of messaging or email regarding a personnel order that would be forthcoming or even to meet with me and the employee. So she's saying she didn't get to see the employee's complaint. She didn't get to see the order that detailed the employee, and nobody met with her. As you know from what I mentioned to you on Saturday, the employee, a limited term appointment, is funded under GVB Sports and Cultural Ambassador Fund, Guam Visitors Bureau Sports and Cultural Ambassador Fund, and not from the general fund or federal funds. Employee was specifically hired to work in the Guam. Yeah. Okay, well, I'm going to come back to Linda Uggan right after the big halftime break that you've all been looking forward. I've been looking forward to it since I started. I really enjoy this halftime break. So I'll see you in 6 or 7 minutes.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Iran targets a U.S. drone. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. The U.S. Navy says an Iranian surface-to-air missile shot down a U.S. drone in international airspace over the Straits of Hormuz today. The downing of the high-altitude drone comes as the U.S. and Iran lock horns over Iran's alleged attacks on several oil tankers in two separate incidents. President Trump reveals the Justice Department is investigating whether U.S. intelligence agencies eavesdrops on his personal telephone calls during the 2016 presidential election.
The fact is they were spying on my campaign, using agencies intelligence agencies to do it, going after Page and Papadopoulos and probably others. We're trying to find out whether or not they actually listened in on my calls. That would be the ultimate. We'll see what happens.
The president speaking last night on Fox's Hannity. A Sacramento police officer dies after being shot yesterday while responding to a domestic disturbance.
When she was shot, she was in the backyard. They could not get to her because that suspect continued shooting. Vance Chandler with the Sacramento Police Department.
All the responding officers, they took extreme measures to make sure that everybody stayed safe, because when somebody has a rifle and they're firing at police officers, it's a very dangerous situation.
They didn't know if this person would possibly come out of their house and continue shooting. Police presence by many different departments.
Eric Rutger with Fox 40 in Sacramento. No word if the gunman has been captured. A police memo identifies the slain officer as Tara O'Sullivan. And a Chinese court says former Interpol President Meng Hongwei has confessed to accepting more than $2 million in bribes and expressed regret for his crime. This is Fox News.
Hey, it's Mom. Somebody forgot to thaw the chicken, so meet us at Chili's for 2 for $25. Oh, and congratulate your sister for making the basketball team. She's thrilled. Love you. See you at Chili's.
Enjoy 2 full meal combos for $25. An appetizer, 2 mouth-watering entrees like our crispy chicken breast, smoked barbecue quarter leg, or smoked jalapeno cheddar sausage. Served with corn on the cob and french fries. 2 bold combos for $25. A full-on meal deal available nightly for a limited time. Together, we Chili's.
So what's the deal? Are you still paying for the right to have your checking account at your bank? Well, at Bank Pacific, we think it's our privilege, not our right. That's why we offer My Green Free Checking, where your monthly maintenance checking fees are zero. That's zero. And it comes with a free Visa check card and monthly green e-statements. My Green Free Checking. Bank Pacific today. Because having you as our customer, that's our privilege.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender? FDIC. Viva Bank Pacific.
A jury in New York City convicts the leader of a sex cult that attracted Hollywood actresses and heiresses. Keith Raniere was found guilty of manipulating his women devotees through shame and humiliation and turning them into sex slaves. The jury in Brooklyn federal court took less than 5 hours to return a guilty verdict on all counts of sex trafficking and related crimes. U.S. Attorney Richard Donahue calls the guru a modern-day Svengali.
Keith Raniere's crime spree has ended, and his victims will finally see justice.
Sentencing is set for September 25th. Raniere continues to maintain he is innocent and will appeal the conviction. YouTube's thinking about making far-reaching changes to protect young viewers.
This following a number of consumer groups' complaints alleging the Google-owned company failed to protect minors and improperly collected their data. Executives reportedly considering removing all kids' content from the site. A rep says the company considers lots of ideas for improving the site, and some remain just that, ideas, adding others we develop and launch, like our restrictions to minors' live streaming or updated hate speech policy. Kristen Goodwin, Fox News.
The Wall Street Journal reports the proposed changes are motivated in part by an ongoing Federal Trade Commission investigation. In Pennsylvania, the FBI arrests a Syrian refugee for allegedly planning to attack a Christian church in Pittsburgh. The pastor of the church says news of the threat has been overwhelming.
But I was indeed grateful that God protected us. We have a great security team here that is already here for just our safety of our congregation, just due to the fact of what's been happening in our society, in our region, and in our country.
Pastor Michael Day with the Legacy International Worship Center. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
We know too well the inconvenience of not having power after a storm. You worry about food in the freezer going bad. Nights get hot. It's hard finding comfort when going to sleep. These are realities. But with solar and battery storage from Micronesia Renewable Energy, these realities can be a thing of the past. The solar works during the day and the batteries power your home at night. Call 632-2613 to see how solar plus battery storage can make life a little more convenient. MRE, the smarter choice.
Liberate your mind with laughter. Budweiser presents hypnosis comedy coming to Guam Liberation Weekend.
Half a day, Guam. I am comedian hypnotist Rich Guzzi, and I can't wait to see you July 20th and 22nd at the Sheraton Laguna Hotel.
With local comedy legend Frank Rios opening the show. $25 general admission, $35 for VIPs. Tickets on sale at 76 Circle K stations and at Coffee Slut. Special thanks to Community First, the Guam Daily Post, Delta Tires, Trivision, and Choice Broadcasting.
You will have the time of your life.
Liberate your mind with laughter is a GSPN production.
So here we are again after that big halftime show that we always enjoy so much here on Tall Tales. We do it every afternoon at 1700, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. The marching band, the drill team, the cheerleaders, the fire eater, the synchronized card section, and that dramatic barrage of cannon fire at the end of the show. It's a great show. So here we are in the second half of Tall Tales. And I've been working with Linda Ibanez, the item on the card. Linda Ibanez versus, as you were, Linda Uggan versus Rick Ibanez. But I think that actually the combatants are of a much greater size than just two people. I see this as an issue that's going to pit the pro-Marine versus the anti-Marine forces. It's going to be interesting to see who lines up on which side. So before the break, I was reading a copy of the grievance that Linda Uggan had filed with the Deputy Director of the Department of Parks and Recreation, lamenting the fact that someone who had been under her supervision had been detailed to the governor's office. And by a careful reading, I determined that the person who had been detailed had written a letter to the director, perhaps complaining about Linda Uggan, that Linda hadn't seen the letter, was taken by surprise by the detailing, and suggested a lack of protocol, that she found out about the detailing sort of second-handed, instead of being in the loop herself, since the person who was being detailed reported to her. Perhaps a little hurt feelings involved there. She goes on to say, oh yes, and then this employee, here's something else that's important. The employee who was detailed is a limited term appointment. It means he's not a career employee, and he can be fired at any time for no reason. He's a limited term employee, and he's funded under the Guam Visitors Bureau Sports and Cultural Ambassador Fund, not the general fund. The employee was specifically hired to work in the Guam Historical Research Division and not elsewhere. So I'm kind of wondering why the Guam Visitors Bureau is hiring someone to work for Linda Uggan in this line of work. That might be just a separate little item on the card itself. And then Linda Uggan goes on to say, detailing the employee has hampered and will continue to hamper the division in carrying out its mandated functions. It has hindered and will continue to hinder the division's progress in moving forward, acting on project and permit reviews, research, inspections, and other review and compliance-related tasks and actions, and also impedes the division's efficiency to complete and accomplish actions pursuant to federal and local mandates. The review and compliance program, the program that employee is assigned to, averages 40 federal and local project reviews a month. To detail the employee to the director's office is unreasonable and a total disregard of the division's mandates. And then here's what Linda Uggan is asking for. 1, rescind the personnel order and instruct the employee to return to the division. 2, meet with the division supervisor prior, and that's her, prior to issuing personnel orders. 3, provide division supervisor a copy of the employee's April 4 letter. And this must have been the complaint letter, huh? 4, meet with the employee and supervisor to resolve issues raised with the employee. So, of course, my curiosity function wonders, what exactly was it that the employee was complaining about? Will we ever find out? I kind of doubt it. And the other side of this grievance is the paper showing that Linda Uggan had met with Richard Ibanez, the acting director, and raised her grievance. It wasn't decided within 10 days, so she could go on to the next step, which was his formal grievance here. So a couple of more takeaways here. Now, Richard Ibanez is the acting director of Parks and Recreation. Hasn't been confirmed by the legislature. So I don't think there's a confirmation hearing scheduled, but I wouldn't be surprised if it happened very quickly, because what better way to get to the bottom of this than to have Richard Ibanez at a confirmation hearing. You can swear him in if you want to, and you could start questioning him about Linda Uggan. Why was Linda Uggan fired? And, of course, we know that in the case of Danny Tydenko, even if you answer the questions correctly, you might not get confirmed. And, of course, if there is a hearing on Ibanez's confirmation, it will be one of those movies that require a cast of 1,000, because all of the environmental and cultural advocates on the island will flock to that hearing to let everyone and his brother know that I'm here to support Linda Uggan. And I don't care, I don't care what she did or didn't, or in the case of the dog, what it was that she didn't do. She's the shippo, and she's really looking out for the culture, and she's, we need her, and we can't get along without her, and we don't think she should have been fired. So it's going to be very interesting to watch. There'll be a lot of sparks flying on this for the next couple of weeks. That's my prediction. I didn't even need to look in my crystal ball for this one. That probably the only question remaining in my mind is how long it will be before the hagiography begins for Linda Uggan. Hagiography is a 3-letter word as you were, a $3 word that means the study of someone for sainthood. Okay, so I got Jesse on the line. Good afternoon, Jesse.
Hello.
Hi. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, just touch up on the Uggan lady. I heard that she hasn't done a good job as at her post. So I don't know if any of how much support she would gather from the activists. You know what I mean?
Okay.
But apparently it's been 10 years and she hasn't done a fine or something like that, or she hasn't thrown down a fine on anything. So I don't even know if that's the whole reason why she got, fired or whatever. But it's pretty interesting that, to see why did she get fired because she hasn't performed, or did she get fired because of her looking into, or stopping construction around the island? I'm not sure.
That is very interesting, Jesse. So tell me a little bit more about what you heard.
Well, I just saw something on Twitter about how she wasn't doing she hasn't really done a good job at being the PO or something like that. So I just wanted to see if you heard about her. Has anyone else said something like that?
No, if I were to put my ear to the ground, what I'm hearing is that maybe some people think she's too much of an obstructionist, holding up projects that need to get completed. I haven't heard that she was, and basically what you're saying is she's not hard enough, and I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, apparently she hasn't been. If she was really an obstructionist, she would have thrown down some fines, or we would have really heard about her the past 10 or at least this past decade. But apparently that hasn't been the case. So kind of interesting when I saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, okay, I just thought I'd chime in on that one. Yeah.
I appreciate it, Jesse. Thanks for calling.
Okay. Have a good one.
Thanks. Yeah. So as Sherlock Holmes would tell Watson, the plot thickens, my dear Watson. Yeah. And then, of course, mere speculation again. If she's being too hard and holding up too many construction projects, has some pressure been put on, say, the governor? Hey, can't you tone your employee down? And then one would expect some pressure from the environmental cultural gang. Linda, can't you be harder? So it's going to be very, very interesting. Next item on the card here is Therese Terlahi and others versus Lou Leon Guerrero. And it's really kind of cut out of the same cloth as the Linda Uggan story. It starts out with a letter to Governor Lou Leon Guerrero, and it's a request to discuss the U.S. military's continued desecration of sacred ancestral sites and native habitats. Now, I'd like to tell you who wrote the letter, but when I look down at the bottom, this is these are not signatures, these are just typed names. Independent Guahan, Protege Letexan, Fuetzin Famalawan, Nacion Chamorro, Manilon Marianas, Manhoban Paraguahan, Guahan Coalition for Peace and Justice, and so on. I don't see any. The only name I see in the whole bunch turns out to be somebody I even know. In fact, someone who's probably pretty well known, Dave Lotz. And I don't think LOTZ, I don't think that's an acronym. I don't think it stands for a large occurrence tending towards zero. The Peace for Okinawa Coalition is involved here. I suppose the Peace for Coalition and Peace for Okinawa Coalition is very involved here. The Pagan Watch, Z's Green Canteen. Do you know where Z's Green Canteen is, real Joe Cruz? I don't either. Cham Glam Botanica, Health Shack, Duk Duk Goose Incorporated. These are who signed this letter. So if I got a letter signed by all these luminaries, I'll tell you what, man, I'd really pay close attention. I'd say, whoa. That would be even worse than getting a letter from Kelly an email from Kelly Clark. You know, you can imagine how I reacted to that. This would be even worse. So it says the undersigned organizations and community stakeholders urgently request a meeting with you to discuss recent news of the persisting desecration of sacred, historically and culturally significant artifacts and sites like Magua Village resulting from military buildup construction. We echo recent requests for a halt to the clearing of vegetation and construction of the Marines cantonment at Finnegadjin and of the live fire training range complex at Northwest Field, where the ancient village of Tailatlo stands to meet the same fate as Magua if we do nothing to protect it. And there's a couple more paragraphs of similar language. We write to you as our Magahaga because we cannot keep driving along Route 3 feeling powerless as we gaze through the fences at hundreds of acres of deforested native habitat, mourning the loss of the endemic and healing plants that have been thriving there. We do not want to read about another desecrated sacred site. Enough is enough. Our island has reached a point in our history where only a few of these historic sites and native limestone forests remain. I can't help but inserting this here. And guess where they are, real Joe Cruz? They're all on military bases. What a coincidence. Yeah. Perhaps the greatest preservation of historical items on the island has been the United States military. Back to the letter. We look to you to be our voice and to help us fight to protect them for future generations to learn and thrive from. We hope that we can meet with you at your earliest convenience. No, it says at your earliest convivence. C-O-N-V-I-V-E-N-C. Convivence. Sounds like something that the neocats do. For more information and to schedule a meeting, kindly contact Maria Hernandez. Well, that's the second name involved here. So they want Governor Lou Leon Guerrero, to get involved here, to tell the military, stop! Stop building right now because you're destroying all of these sacred things. Well, let's just stand back here for a minute. And I'm not going to try to pretend that I'm going to be objective. I'm very pro Marine Corps buildup. And I'm not going to apologize for it. The Marines are going to build a base here. It's going to be called Camp Bloss. I think it's a great idea, and I'm fully in favor of it. I'm not going to go into all of the reasons, although I could. I'm in favor of it. In the process of building that base, areas of the island are going to have to be cleared that haven't been cleared for a long, long time, if they were ever cleared. And in the process of doing that, it's obvious that certain historical, I guess they're historical relics, lusongs, pottery shards, etc., are going to be collected. Now, everything that I have read suggests to me that the military is doing a whole lot more than what I thought they would be doing when they came out here to start to build this base. The military's idea, the military's job is to get Camp Blas constructed and to move Marines in and to train. That's what the Marine Corps is all about. But, you know, they've entered into these agreements with the local historic preservation folks that if they find something, they'll isolate it. They're going to build a repository for it. They have stopped construction a couple of times when they ran across these things. They're not deliberately destroying anything. So it would appear to me that the Marine Corps has made a concession. And that concession is this. Unlike some of the construction that we do, we're not just going to go in and bulldoze and build and damn the consequences. We're going to be very sensitive to these concerns that groups like Z's Green Canteen and Sham Glam Botanica raise, and we're going to take steps to minimize the impact of what we're doing here. On the other hand, we have these groups who are saying, stop the work. So, you know, if I were an impartial arbitrator, what I'd say is you guys got to find some kind of common ground. You can't expect the Marines to give up their plans to build Camp Blas. It's not going to happen. They're going to do it. And they're going to do it for no other reason than sunk cost. They've got so much invested now that even if the commandant of the Marine Corps got down on his knees and prayed to the president, President, please, let's stop Camp Blas. Let's just end it. It wouldn't happen because we're too far down that road. So those who are concerned about historical relics, you know, I see it every day. I talk about it almost every day on this program. The politics of grievance. We have a grievance, and what you're doing makes us mad. In fact, it even offends us. And therefore, you should abandon your plans completely and adopt ours, because we have a grievance. You don't have a grievance. So I looked at my cards, and my cards I'm sitting here with a royal flush. And all you got is a pair of deuces. So I'm going to pick up this whole pot. That's kind of the attitude of, I can't attach any names to it, but, you know, the list of these groups on the bottom. I suppose you could say unreasonable. Not that I would condemn someone for being unreasonable. I think there are times when you don't want to compromise. The other hot issue of the day, abortion. I wouldn't adopt a position that would say that, well, you know, abortion is an evil, and if we could get the abortionists that we're recruiting to promise us that he'll only do abortions on 8 of the 10 women that are hiring him, I wouldn't say that's a good deal. There's some things you don't compromise on. And without putting myself in the shoes, or excuse me, the jury of the folks like Nacion Chamorro, I suppose I can't properly gauge whether or not the positions they're taking don't admit of any compromise. I think that in that case, a certain sense of pragmatism is probably what's going to get them as far as they're going to go. That the object could be to work as closely with these military authorities who, as far as I can see, have bent over backwards to accommodate our local activist group. Made a mistake or two here and there, but I haven't seen anything that looks deliberate or the product of a bad animus. So that's the way I would see it if I tried to look at it objectively. Now, looking at this through my political prism, which you remember when I look through my political prism, I don't see morals, I don't see the law, I don't see statute, principle, public policy. All I see are the political considerations. And the political considerations I see here is that our governor is getting boxed in by these people who supported her for governor, and I thought that they would be given at least a sympathetic ear, if not the kind of action they're demanding. But so far, our governor, to my surprise, has come out and at least said the right things. Yeah, we want the buildup. We see it as good. We like working with the military, etc. So by putting this pressure on, especially in light of the focal point called Linda Uggan, they're really putting the governor on the spot. Is she going to say, yeah, I'm casting my lot with you guys? Hello, Shoshana. Yeah, you know, those nice conversations we've been having, well, that's over, because we're saying, no, we don't want the buildup. We're saying, stop. No more. So the way the governor handles this is going to tell you an awful lot more about the governor than it will about the buildup. Because from my vantage point, what I see is the irresistible force meeting the not so immovable object. The other players in this are Therese Terlahi and let's see, the usual suspects. Time for the seventh inning stretch. I'll be right after the seventh inning, back after the seventh inning stretch.
Business travel just got easier. Take your data plan with you for only $10 a day to all 17 data-to-go destinations. Never worry about additional data roaming charges when you go where your business needs you. The US, China, Thailand, and so much more. Have the assurance you need to check emails, surf the web, and stay connected. Call 688-2677 today to make sure your account is data-to-go ready. Docomo Pacific. Better together.
Let's go for a drive.
Let's take a stroll. Let's gallivant.
Let's go cruising.
We all have different ways to describe how we get up and go in our cars. But whatever you may call it, you can do more of it when you save 6% off your fuel purchases at any Shell station when you use your eligible Bank of Guam Visa and MasterCard credit cards. So stop by any Guam or CNMI Shell station and start saving today. Visit bankofguam.com for more information. Terms and conditions apply. Bank of Guam, the People's Bank. Member FDIC.
Okay, seventh inning stretch. We're back. We got two more innings of Tall Tales to go. And I'm looking at a story that ran in the Daily News talking about a letter from 20 residents, businesses, and community groups requesting a meeting. That's the letter I just read. And then a quote from Victoria Diaz, a Manilon Marianas volunteer. I don't want my son growing up and not knowing who he is. I wouldn't want that either. Not knowing who he is. It's not just pottery or lusong or scattered ceramic scatter. It's history. This joins continued calls from senators for the governor to step in and halt construction, as the past month's military buildup work revealed at least 5 sites Marine Corps properties, across Marine Corps properties containing ancient artifacts. The latest discovery on Monday was ceramic scatter and lusong, or mortar and pestle, at Northwest Field. as of Wednesday evening, there has been no response from the governor's office. I wonder why. Okay, I got Bob on the line. That's not me, is it? No. Well, sometimes I talk, old folks tend to talk to themselves from time to time. I really shouldn't be spending a lot of time talking to myself, especially when I'm here on air talking in the mic. People would hear me say, Bob, you should quit talking. Anyhow, hello, Bob.
Yeah, I'm getting there myself, sir.
Okay, good.
Well, thank you, Senator. I wanted to add in, maybe I can help you on this. I am one of the contractors that's doing the ordinance cleanup on the island.
Okay.
So I might have a little insight that people might enjoy.
I'd appreciate it.
At least be aware of. We are finding a lot of live ordnance on this island, especially San Nicolas area, where the Marines are going in, and Northwest Field. It is happening. It's true, and I don't think you're going to get a response from NAPAC or the government proper. But I can tell you that we are very cautious, very, very considerate to any cultural items that we find, but the ordinance has to go. I mean, this is dangerous to the kids. It's dangerous to everybody.
Yeah, I agree. So if the buildup stopped and the ordinance remained, not a good situation, right, Bob?
Well, absolutely. You don't want that stuff sitting around in your backyard. Eventually, it blew up 2 kids in Tierra Santa in California, and it's caused lots of deaths. And you have to take the risks with the gains.
Understood, Bob.
We're trying to be as sensitive to the environment as we possibly can. And we certainly don't want to hurt any cultural items that are here on island, but the ordinance has to go.
Yeah, I agree 100%, Bob, and I really appreciate your sharing that little bit of information with our international radio listening audience. I should have known that there'd be an unexploded ordinance out there, but it just hasn't occurred to me in the current kerfuffle that we're dealing with.
Yeah, well, I have to be careful about how much I say, but you could always contact NAPAC for a PAO and a formal disclosure from the government.
Okay, Bob. Good thought.
All right. Well, thank you, sir.
It's always a pleasure to talk to another Bob. Bob.
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, so first Bob and now Joe. But this isn't you, real Joe Cruz. This is another Joe. Good afternoon, Joe.
Hey there, Uncle Senator Bob.
Yes, sir.
So I understand there's going to be a conference from the 23rd to the 28th, I think, at the Hyatt for the environment, Pacific Islands Environment Conference.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Pacific Islands Environment Conference at the Hyatt from the 23rd to the 28th.
Okay.
So more opportunity to talk about environmental and cultural artifact property. So everyone who's it could be a positive influence to get more attention in, and if everyone stays objective, get hopefully the repository. I'm not sure it's finished. If it isn't finished, they get it finished sooner, and maybe have more for our museums and for our people to study it with the artifacts. But I just thought I'd share that with you. This 23rd to 28th at the Hyatt. Thanks for your time.
Okay, well, thank you very much for giving us a heads up on that one. Let's see, the phones are getting hot here. Keith, I don't think we've had Keith on the line before, have we? Welcome to Tall Tales, Keith.
I moved here a couple of years ago.
Okay.
I, too, am a contractor working with DOD, and have been working with DOD on a variety of projects on this island for over a decade. And I can tell you that, in my experience, they do not take encountering cultural resources lightly. Any discovery that we have encountered during our work here, and things just stop. I mean, there's a running joke that the only thing that can get a construction or environmental project stopped faster than an archaeological find is a bomb. We've had innumerable interactions with the Navy when we find things, and they keep close contact with the shippo. I mean, there's a strict process lined out. If you discover anything of any significance, that doesn't mean you're generic sort of pottery scatter. That's all over the place. But anything out of the ordinary, and you've got you're supposed to stop work and make some phone calls, and it happens. That's what's happening. I don't think people realize the lengths at which the military is conducting due diligence in this regard.
Okay, Keith. That's kind of the feeling that I had from what I read in the paper, but I'm glad you've come along here and verified that for us. Thank you, Keith.
By the way, love the show.
Well, thanks, Keith. Keep tuning in. We're glad to have you on board.
Will do. Take care.
Thanks. Okay, so that was Keith, and now I've got Anthony on the line. Good afternoon, Anthony.
Uncle Bob.
Fide.
Fide. Let me start this. You are a guy that moved to Guam, married a local girl, and learned how to speak the language.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that guy, the one that said use the word Pinagay yan.
One guy.
Yeah, and apparently, I don't know what his background is, but we have to be sensitive to our these historical stuff, right? And if it's there, it's there. If it's not there, it's not there. But if it's there, something has to be done to preserve it. And if they're going to preserve it, they can, either can do things, take pictures and everything, and then remove it so that the military can do what they want. But it bothers me. I'm pretty old, and it looks to me like Guam doesn't belong to the Chamorros anymore. It belongs to everybody else. They come over here, they love it. This is a good place to come over here and make your money. We just need to, we just need to preserve those things so that our children can know where they came from. But everybody's interested in hurrying up and let's go do the build-up, let's go bulldoze everything, turn this place into one big giant concrete, battleship. And that bothers me. And it's not just me. My cohort, the guys that are my age, we just sit down, we talk, say, "Lan, what are we going to do? We have no choice." Okay, Bob, that's it.
Okay, well, thank you very much for calling. I just can't help but point out here, though, that if people want children to have some sense of pre-contact Guam because we've saved these relics that are out in the boonies, if they're still out in the boonies, how does that help? They've been out there in the boonies ever since, and no one ever paid any attention to them, either at Finnegodson or over at on the other side of the island. No one paid any attention to them, to those places, the relics, the Lusong, or any of that stuff until the military came along and said, we want to build here. Now all of a sudden it's a front burner. I see some interesting things out of the corner of my eye popping up on Facebook here, so I think I'll just kind of go through the Facebook comments here and see where it takes me. I'm going to finish up the show on what we're talking about now. The Linda Uggan. I guess we'll make Linda Uggan the face of this whole thing. The whole Linda Uggan controversy dealing with the Marine Corps artifacts, the SHPO, the termination, the whole thing. But one interesting thing I see here on Facebook is from Mowanman Rendar Gutlam, who says Mogethin from Yap. So I guess that's a traditional greeting from Yap. So part of our international radio listening audience includes the Federated States of Micronesia, particularly Yap State. So glad you're with us, Mowanman. And then we've got Richard V. Leon. Here we go against a person. Here we go again. Person look for personal permanent GovGuam job. Fire Department of Public Works actor Rick Ibanez. And then Don Ed Colani says the Pacific Islands Environmental Conference. Joe Cruz, not you, another Joe Cruz, chimes in and says, fire everyone, even you, Bob. Fire yourself. All right, you're fired. You're fired. How do you like that? Pretending I'm Donald Trump, right? Okay, I got another. Why, the calls are coming in thick and fast here. We got Francis on line one. Good afternoon, Francis.
Buenas, señor. How are you?
Buenas. Malik, Zahagone?
Palo. Dari señora Malika, todo?
Ungan?
Está. You know what, Uncle? I'm going to be honest with you. There are sentiments up there that maybe there's ill feelings that some might use the, we don't want the Marines building a firing range. But then again, I was thinking about it with a couple of boys named. I think there's real estate interests up there. I think some of these our families that are protesting have land up there. And I think they should take this into consideration, and see if they can agree to some kind of settlement. If not, then I'm sorry, because I don't think it's anything else is possible. But if I'm not mistaken, there's real estate up there's original landowners. I think that are interested in their land, and I guess their land is inside the military zone. So that's what I'm thinking, Uncle, that this problem is never going to end if we keep using the, I'm not against anybody. I'm just laying all the facts on the table, Uncle. Now, there's real estate here, and there's people that have land up there, and I hope that maybe the governor or elected leaders or maybe the Air Force, Navy, whatever it takes to sit down and maybe they can come to the table and figure out something, and question the fact that question people if find out who's got property inside the base, and maybe they can come to some kind of resolution.
Francis, what you're saying is that inside Anderson Air Force Base, there's property that at one time was owned by a citizen, and the property was condemned by the U.S. government, and those people are aggrieved because the property was condemned. That's basically what you're saying, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And I'm not aware of that happening. There was one hotly contested piece of property that was condemned back in 1962 that, led to a lot of civil strife, et cetera, but that's the only piece of property that I'm aware of. I'm not aware of any property aboard Anderson that fits into that category. But I think what you're saying is that if there is, that someone should pay the people that used to own that land some more money, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting...
I'm assuming that maybe there's something's not right here, and I wanted to lay it out. I hope I didn't offend anybody, but we have land at NAS, and we lost that on the runway. The others on the cliff line managed to retain their piece of property, but we let go because my grandpa was a World War I, World War II. All my uncles were retired civil service here, working for the Navy, and they when they told me they had land up there, but they also told me that it was like a contribution to national defense, for national defense. So they really didn't want to fight, argue. My dad wanted to get into that. I guess they gave him a few bucks for some partial up there, but we really never were. I gave up on that. They're probably resting in peace right now, and it's just never going to end. But God bless everybody. Thank you, Uncle Bob.
Thank you, Francis. Well, you know, it's a strange set of circumstances here. I'll come back to this in the home stretch.
The sky's the limit with Bank Pacific's secure MyCloud banking. You can access your account 24/7 with your smartphone, your computer, your iPad, or any other tablet. You can pay bills, set up alerts, check your balances, wire transfer money. It's never been easier. Enroll online or come on in and see one of our friendly staff. Digital Life, Digital Solutions. Bank Pacific.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender, FDIC. Viva Bank Pacific.
Discover a new galaxy. GTA introduces the new Samsung Galaxy S10 in 3 different sizes. The Galaxy S10 comes with cool new features like Power Share that allows you the ability to share your battery power with other devices. Or you can capture a wider world with its new camera featuring an ultra-wide lens for when you need to take pictures of the whole family. And with GTA handset payment option, you can take home a Galaxy S10 for $0 down. GTA, we start with you.
Well, let me get my 2 cents worth in on condemned land to start with here. People are talking about the original owners. Well, people who own the land prior to its being condemned are not the, quote, original owners. Wow. I can hardly get a word in edgewise here. Let me finish this, Carl, and then I'll pick up the phone. People who own the land prior to its being condemned are not the original owners. Some of the people who own the land prior to its being condemned bought the land in tax sales from the Navy. And after they bought it in a tax sale from the Navy, the United States government condemned it. Some got their land in other different ways. But to talk in terms of original owners, I think is a little bit misleading. I prefer the term pre-condemnation owners. So what has happened here, I'm only going to talk about post-1950. Pre-1950 is a little different. I'll pick that up sometime if you're interested. But post-1950, land was condemned in Guam the same way it would have been in California or Pennsylvania or anywhere else. The same mechanism. And the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution says no private land can be taken for public purpose without payment of just compensation. So at law, just compensation was paid for the land taken. In the late 70s, so the land was paid for once. In the late 70s, Mr. Wampat, representative in Congress, got another land payment bill through Congress, and people that owned that, the pre-condemnation owners, were once again paid for that same piece of property, too. And then you know that after about 2000, the U.S. government started giving land back to the government of Guam. And the idea is that when federal land becomes excess, first offered to other federal agencies for them to use, and if nobody uses it, it's given to a local government agency to be used for a public purpose. We didn't do that. We didn't use the land for a public purpose. What we did was we set up the Ancestral Lands Commission, and we gave the land to people who'd been paid for it twice that I refer to as the pre-condemnation owners. So we had a situation where, as for example, on Tejan, the U.S. government gave us some buildings, some very valuable buildings, etc., gave them to us for nothing. We gave them back to the pre-condemnation owners and then bought them back from the pre-condemnation owners at extremely high prices. So I haven't done an extensive search, but I am unaware of any place else in the United States when the U.S. government took land in fee simple absolute, and ever gave the land back to anybody for any reason. It just never happened. So what happened here, the pre-condemnation owners here, got something that nobody else has ever gotten, as far as I know. And the United States government took large amounts of land. The state of Nevada, about 93% of the land is owned by the U.S. government. Not because it was condemned, but for a different reason. And when the United States built Fort Hood, Texas, they condemned hundreds of square miles of land and wiped out 6 small towns almost overnight. Fort Campbell, Kentucky, the same way. So, the politics of grievance is such that, people still want to grind that axe. And I'm glad Francis brought that up. If there are people on board and people who own land on board Anderson that was condemned, so far I haven't heard about it. And let's hope that that's not the case. It'll make a complicated situation all that more complicated. I lost our Carl, I guess, huh? Okay, let me just coast through the Facebook comments here. I'm glad to know that our international radio listening audience extends all the way to Yap. And let's see, Jesse Limpiaco says, they promised the buildup. Now, I don't know who they is. It could be that guy standing out in front of the building, right? They promised the buildup would be good for Guam, and all it did was create low-paying service jobs and price thousands of families out of the real estate market. Now they desecrate sacred sites. Imagine the Department of Defense building a base on the Arlington Cemetery, but no one would even consider that to be so sacred. Well, a little history lesson here, Jesse. Arlington Cemetery was owned by the parents of General Robert E. Lee. Family property. When the Civil War was over, the winner said, okay, Robert E. Lee and your Confederacy, we're going to build a cemetery on what used to be your land. Not a very good example, Jesse. And then I think a little vocabulary lesson might also be in order here. I don't know of anyone who desecrated any of these artifact sites. Look up the word desecrate in the dictionary. To desecrate a site means more than to destroy it inadvertently. To desecrate it, this is pretty graphic, but it's sort of like going inside a church and defecating. That would be desecration. So you kind of got carried away with your own rhetoric here today, Jesse. Anyhow, that's it for today. The Real Joe Cruz and I. We only got one more day this week, Real Joe Cruz. But we'll be back for it tomorrow.